born and raised on a farm with no running water and no electricity and no phone. We were raised dirt poor. So money was a definite driving force for me. So many people, I think, inside of the hypnotic world, or even inside of the magic world, or some of those artistic worlds, they think that the art is the thing. I'll have other performers, other hypnotists specifically come visit me at my 17,000 square foot home here in town, and the first word they say when they walk through the front door begins with F. I said, I don't want to be Pepsi to somebody else's Coke, so I'm going to find something that I can be the best in the world at. I had gotten hypnotized when I was 16 years old, and it blew my mind, transformed my whole life. And one of the franchisees came up to me after the show that I'd been paid $2,500 to do. He laughingly says, hey, can you teach me how to hypnotize my employees to show up on time?
Hey, and welcome to the Mindful Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Van Ness, and today we have Marshall Sylver on the show. Marshall is one of the leading hypnotists in the world. He used to have his own headlining show here in Las Vegas, and now he's gone on to work with businesses and individuals to consult them on how to change their life through the power of hypnosis. He actually goes and hypnotizes people and helps them rewire their brain and improve their life. I had the pleasure of going to one of his events last week, and it was phenomenal to see him speak on stage and create wild transformations in people's lives. It's a really fascinating episode. We talk about how he's been able to do that, his pivot from performing to educating, and how he goes and actually sells people from stage. It's a really amazing episode. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's dive in.
All right, cool. Hey, thanks for joining us today. So I've noticed a lot of people, there's a lot of coaches, consultants, there's motivational speakers, but the one thing I haven't noticed is there's no one who's come through and come up in like the next generation that's doing what you do. Why is that? And why do you think, do you see someone coming in and being a hypnotist, master of persuasion, or do you think that that's like a lost art?
No, I don't think there's anybody coming up and doing what I do, because I don't think everybody gets what I did. What I did was, I was born and raised on a farm with no running water and no electricity and no phone. We were raised dirt poor. So money was a definite driving force for me. And so many people, I think, inside of the hypnotic world, or even inside of the magic world, or some of those artistic worlds, they think that the art is the thing. I'll have other performers, other hypnotists specifically come visit me at my 17,000 square foot home here in town, and the first word they say when they walk through the front door begins with F. And they just say, how did you do this? And my whole strategy is, show business is two words, and business is the much bigger word. So that's the thing that I think about, is I say, okay, no matter how good my craft is, if I can't sell it, it doesn't matter. I could be a mediocre talent and do really good business, and I'll be in business. Madonna comes to mind. Somebody like that, an artist that by her own admission, even at her peak, was just okay, not an exceptional vocalist, except she put the pieces together and marketed it. Knew that sex appeal would drive it, that controversy would keep her in the headlines, and then, the rest of it takes care of itself.
Yeah, I got a lot of friends, obviously living in Vegas in the magic world, and I know the ones that are wealthier, they all transition to something else, right? One of my buddies, he transitioned from magic to, he was the guy doing cardistry on the Now You See Me movie. He literally trained Leonardo DiCaprio how to do cardistry. And he transitioned to making YouTube videos, right? Tyus, who you met earlier, he transitioned to something else. So there's definitely a cap, I think, in the magic and performance, unless you go out to be like a Copperfield or a Chris Angel or something like that. What point was that transition where you went from being performer to business person and selling products and coaching and that kind of stuff?
I was 21 years old, and I was the marketing promotions director of a radio station up in LA. And so my job was to drive around in the radio station van, find bumper stickers for the radio station, pull the people over and give them $100. The job I had after that was, I was 21 years old and I was managing the #1 nightclub down in San Diego, California. And my job was to go up and down the line and find the prettiest girls in line and pull them out of line, take them into the club, give them free drinks and free food all night long to make sure that we had the best looking girls in the city and the club. And I just was bored. So I went through 8 jobs, 8 apartments in 2 years. And I remember distinctly, I was sitting at a bar in Los Angeles with a buddy of mine who was a rock and roller. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm not going to do magic, because at the time, Copperfield was massively dominant. I said, I don't want to be Pepsi to somebody else's Coke. So I'm going to find something that I can be the best in the world at. And I had gotten hypnotized when I was 16 years old, and it blew my mind, transformed my whole life. And I said, I think I'm going to pursue this. And so I pursued being a hypnotist. And because my background was performing, I started off doing shows. And one of my first bookings was for a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise meeting. So all these franchise owners were there, and I hypnotize all of them to be chickens, and I hypnotize one of them to be Colonel Sanders, and I give them a big blow-up axe to chase the chickens around the stage. And one of the franchisees came up to me after the show that I'd been paid $2,500 to do, and he laughingly says, "Hey, can you teach me how to hypnotize my employees to show up on time?" And I said, "No, but I can hypnotize you to communicate in a way that they will." And he said, "Really? What would you charge me?" Well, I'd never done it. I had no idea what to do. So I said $25,000, just threw a number out there. And he said, "Okay, can I bring 9 of my friends? Can I get 9 other franchisors to the meeting and we can split the cost?" And I said, "Yeah." So that was my first seminar. So it didn't take me long to figure out, let's see, $2,500 for a show, $25,000 for education. I'm going with the education. And so early on, I made the leap from performing, which I loved, by the way, and I still love. I made the leap from performing to education because people will spend X for entertainment. They'll spend X times 10 or 12 or 20 for their business. And I realized if it's a business decision, it's a lot easier for them to write a check.
Yeah, that's a great point. So this is when you were 21 or your, early 20s?
Yeah, I was 23.
Okay. Because you started hypnotizing around age 17, right?
I hypnotized my first subject when I was 17. And it was a girl that I had grown up with in Michigan. She came out to California to visit me, and she was my very first subject. She was a girl that was my friend. I was in the friend zone, and I couldn't figure out how to get out of the friend zone.
And you wanted to date her?
Oh, God. Dating is a kind of a lucid word.
Okay.
Yes, I did want to date her. And then I hypnotized her, and after I hypnotized her, she wouldn't leave me alone. So first and foremost, I said, yes, I think this is going to be my future.
And this stuff works.
It works, yeah. But more than that, for me, hypnosis is real magic. And that was the thing that excited me is, it's one thing for me to show you a card trick with sleight of hand or a magical illusion that uses gimmicks to accomplish what we're accomplishing. Hypnosis is real magic. We're real magic. Human beings are real magic. And so when I realized that I could help people do the most amazing of things in my stage show, when I was performing on the Strip here in Las Vegas, I had the world's largest hypnotic production show. And so not only would I have beautiful sets that I designed and dancers and pyrotechnics and multimedia, and we're talking, this is way back in, 2001. I also would incorporate a lot of magical illusions inside of it. But one of the things that I would do is I would take 3 women that had volunteered from the audience, make their bodies stiff and rigid, put their necks on one support, put their feet on another support, and then I would walk up their bodies like a human staircase. And no tricks, no gimmicks. It's exactly what it looks like. These are real people from the audience that I'm just empowering through the process of subconscious reprogramming to have superhuman strength to be able to support my weight on their abdomen. And the reason I like doing stuff like that is reality is created by validation. And once you stretch somebody's validation of what reality is, everything else changes. So those women that I stood on, once they realized how much physical power they had, then they can transcribe that or translate it over to the other things in their lives and say, okay, if I could do this thing that I didn't know I could do, what else could I do that I don't think I can do?
How much of hypnotism is just like people falling in line, right? Because there's, you got 9 people up on stage. I've seen shows, many times before, and I'm like, and the hypnotists a lot of times will like send people down that aren't reacting the right way. But then sometimes I'm like, is that person just like peer pressure and just like quacking like a duck because they are being sucked into it? Or, I've never personally been hypnotized myself to that level. So what does that look like?
You said a whole lot there. So I want to go back and really address that. You said you sent people down that it wasn't working for. So I want to clarify something. Everyone can be hypnotized. And it's not even difficult to hypnotize people. What's more difficult is to bring them out of the trance they're already in. One that says they can or they can't, whatever it is, fill in the blank, make money, have a great relationship, lose weight, whatever it is they're working on. So everybody can be hypnotized. A stage show is a really bad example of what hypnosis is. And here's why. A stage hypnotist has a limited amount of time to select a small group of people as a representative of the audience and then do the show. So they're going to select the people that in that environment are most responsive, and they're going to send the ones back to the audience that are not. Unfortunately, some of those people that get sent back, because it's hypnosis, believe they can't be hypnotized because they were sent back. And that might not have been the case. It might have been the hypnotist doing his show already had enough guys and he needed some women up there. Or maybe he already had enough younger people to represent the audience. He needed some more mature people up there. So that's first and foremost. Then you asked me the question, how much of it is actually hypnosis and how much is them actually going along with things? And that's a question near to my heart, because when I was 16 years old, I was in my first hypnotic show as a participant, not as the performer. And it was at my high school. And I was massively socially awkward as a kid because we were dirt poor. And so I, for the most part, during my high school years, was wearing my sister's clothes to school, the hand-me-downs to school. And in fact, the thong used to be really hard on me. It's funny how you can become really used to certain things. And
You're
then,
still wearing it now?
can you keep a secret?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So what happened was he gave me a suggestion that when he said the words "Sonny Boy," I would stand up from my seat in the audience. I'd walk back to the stage. I'd fall on my butt. I'd roll my pant legs up above my knees, and I'd climb on his lap, and I'd put my thumb in my own mouth, and I'd say, "Sing it again, Daddy." And I remembered going back to my seat in the audience and thinking to myself, I'll be damned if I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do that and embarrass myself in front of all my peers, all the
So
other
that was
students.
the command. He implanted
That was
this
the
into
program
you.
he gave me. He says, "Sonny Boy," and I stand up from my seat in the audience. And so I'm sitting in the audience, and Lord knows I can't be leveraged there. I'm in the audience. So there's no real pressure. He says, "Sonny Boy," and I feel like a magnet's pulling me back to the stage. And I stand up, and I walk back to the stage, and I pull up my pant legs, and I climb on his lap, and my thumb's in my mouth, and I say, "Sing it again, Daddy." And then I went home that night, and I asked the very question that you just asked. I said, was I actually hypnotized, or was I just doing what he told me to do? And I thought, well, what if he had told you to be confident, and you just became confident? What if he told you to, change your life? What if he told you to go out and be a multimillionaire, Marshall? And because he told me I could, I believed that I would. And if I went out and took those actions and produced the result, then he was right. In that moment, I realized if that was hypnosis, which it is, then that is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. In fact, I'll even go so far as to say, ultimately, everything's hypnosis.
Yeah, it's kind of like the placebo concept, right? It's like, well, for me, like if I'm taking a sugar pill and it cured my cancer, I don't care that it was a placebo.
No, you
it
don't
still
care.
cured my cancer.
Yep.
Right. So ultimately, the result is what we're looking for. And if the hypnosis or the belief that the hypnosis is real is what got you there, then so be it. Right.
Yep.
But there's real elements of it too that you can't hide like that.
Maybe, and again, that's hypnosis. What you just described is a piece of hypnosis. And so I'll go even further. I just had open heart surgery about 1.5 years ago. And when I went, I had a torn valve.
Okay.
And when I went in for open heart surgery, the surgeon had told me it's going to be about a 6-hour surgery. And when I went in for surgery, I have 3 young children. And unfortunately, the only time I could schedule the surgery was right before one of my son's birthdays. And I thought, what a horrible thing. I go in right before his birthday and, God forbid something happens. And so when I went in, I told the doctor, I said, before you do the surgery, 2 things. Number 1, my surgery is going to be the easiest surgery you've ever done. It's going to happen very quickly. It's going to be easy. Everything's going to work perfectly. And before I come back from anesthesia, I want you to call my wife and tell her I was a rock star. So they do the surgery. I'm coming to in the ICU. And the nurse, as she's bringing me to, starts laughing. And I said, what's so funny? She said, that surgery was supposed to be 6 hours. I said, how long did it take? She said, it took 3 hours. We've never seen anything like that. I said, step 1. Then she laughed again. And I said, well, tell me. She said, yes, we already called your wife and we told her you were a rock star. You know what she said? I said, I do. She said, of course he was. It's Marshall. And so again, it comes back to that constant self-talk that we have, no matter what it is in our life. Your brain psychosomatically controls your body. So if your brain psychosomatically controls your body, which means you can think a thought and cause yourself to have goosebumps. You can think a thought and cause yourself to have tension that can put undue stress on your heart. You can think thoughts and cause your digestive process to respond differently. So rather than keep that food or weight on your body, that you digest it and it leaves your body as waste. So your brain controls every single function. Are you lying to your body? Is your mind lying to your physiology? No, it's directing your physiology. So let's take that one step further. Let's imagine that I hypnotized myself to believe I'm a world-class speaker. But let's imagine I suck, that I haven't been on stage enough to get good. I'm not really that good. I walk out into an audience, though, and I've hypnotized myself to believe that I'm the best in the world. Nobody knows that. In fact, they might not even like me. They might have even heard, gosh, this guy sucks because he's brand new. Except I get out on stage and I've hypnotized myself. So I see them like make faces or move around, and I interpret everything they're doing as them loving me. Well, guess what? That just adds to my confidence. And if it adds to my confidence, guess what happens to my performance? It gets better. Reverse that. I'm a really great speaker. And for whatever reason, maybe I've had trouble in my life, just went through a divorce, had some kind of trauma. My confidence is low all of a sudden. And I walk out on stage and I'm not, I don't think anybody's going to like me. I'm in a really bad place. They love me. The audience loves me when I walk out. But because my mindset, my belief, my program is that they don't like me, when I see them smile or do something, I think they're patronizing me. I think they're making fun of me. And if I think they're making fun of me and I think they don't like me, guess what? It's going to affect my performance. And so it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, when you come down to it and you ask, is this real? Is that hypnosis? Is that real? Or were they just doing it? You're right, it doesn't matter. The ultimate thing that matters is, did we get the result we were going for or not? We're living in like bizarre times with mainstream media and politics as they are, where the general public is being led around by its nose, by mainstream media, by big tech, by our own government, by all governments on the planet for the most part. And most people don't realize that it's bullshit, that the stuff that we're experiencing and the things that we are seeing and the lies we're being told, utter nonsense, except most people are sheep led around by their noses. And they're afraid not only to have an opinion, because they know if they have an opinion, it sets them up to be attacked. And I say, have an opinion anyway.
Mm. Yeah, it's crazy. It's interesting how you were literally getting surgery and you implanted the idea in the surgeon, the doctor, and the team there that this was going to happen. And you can go through, I bet you can go to the deli and tell the guy that this is going to be you're going to give me the best piece of meat here, for the same, whatever, right?
I don't say that at the deli. Okay. In my single days, I used to say that at the strip club. I did.
You're coming home with me, so and so forth.
That is how I met my wife.
At the strip club?
No, but okay. Lord knows she could have if she wanted to. No, I met my wife. I was doing a seminar in Boston, and there were 1,000 people there. And I walked up the center aisle, and on the fourth row back on the center aisle was this gorgeous woman, young woman. And I walked on stage. And as a salesperson, you know this, you've got to qualify your prospects. So the first thing I did when I got on stage is I said, who here is single and would love to create an awesome, passionate relationship? And while I'm asking, I pointed at myself. Yeah. And I look at the audience, and some of them have their hands up. She doesn't. She's just looking at me and smiles. I said, who here is in a relationship and wants more passion in that relationship? People put their hands up. She doesn't. She looks away. When you attend Turning Point, my foundational course, one of the skill sets I teach, yes, I did just now. When you attend Turning Point, one of the foundational skill sets I teach is something called cold reading. And cold reading is the ability to put your attention on somebody else, just like I just did, and read their body language. So when I said, when you attend Turning Point, and you grinned, oh my God, he's hypnotizing me. Not yet, your check hasn't cleared. And so when she didn't put her hand up and then she looked away, I knew she was in a relationship that she didn't want more passion in. And so I said, game on, baby. And so I walked into the audience, and without her knowing it and without the other 1,000 people in the room knowing it, I hypnotized her to come up to me on the break and ask me out on a date.
Mm. Yeah, cool. Now, there's a couple things you did here, right? So one thing that magicians, performers know is, right, where the magician's hand is, there's probably something happening somewhere else.
That's
right?
called misdirection.
And
those are lonely magicians that do that, by the way.
But then you're doing something like this where you're pointing, right?
I'm anchoring to myself.
So what are some of these things that you're doing, and you're just doing kind of nonchalantly that maybe you don't even realize you're doing to this day? That are just
Do you
inherent?
mean me or somebody else?
You, yeah. What are some of the things like, there's like you just did this. Why did you point at yourself to who wants a passionate relationship? Why do you point at yourself? What's that doing, and how's it affecting the subconscious mind?
So I took resistance to you saying, maybe you don't even know what you're doing. That was the reason I questioned that.
Okay.
So I know every gesture. I know exactly what I'm doing on every gesture. I know what I'm doing on the color of clothing that I wear, on how I present anything. And when I teach people, and you're good at this, I mean, you're a master marketer, so you understand human psychology and mind triggers and the things that cause people to respond. Yes, I'm schmoozing you right now. I am. So again, I'm not going to pretend.
It's cool though how you are talking about what you do, which gives you the ability to lean into it, right? When I'm having a reaction to something you're doing, you can lean into it and address it. It's like these are the things that, when you come to my program and when you show up and when you ascend to the next level program, because you're going to want to keep buying, right? Because you're a buyer, obviously, right? You're someone that likes to invest in yourself.
And if you're not a buyer, get out of here.
Right.
There's no point in us being together.
Yeah, that's cool.
So yes, so I don't do anything covertly. I use hypnotic techniques to sell people. I hypnotized my wife to ask me out on a date, and 17 years later, 3 kids later, we're still together. And so, yes, I know exactly what I'm doing, and it's not a matter of a technique. It's a matter of becoming someone new. So if I know that, I'll give you an example. In my seminar, I'll walk up to somebody in the audience and I'll say, "Hi, my name's Marshall," and I'll introduce myself, and they'll say, "Hi, my name's Cindy." And then I'll walk up to the next person and I'll say, "Hi, I'm Marshall Sylver." And they'll say, "Hi, I'm Sam Wilson." And then I ask the audience, "Did you notice a distinction?" And the audience will say, "Yeah, you gave out your first name, you got first name back. You gave out your first and last name, you got first and last name back." And I say, "Yeah, that's absolutely accurate. We get back what we're sending out." So if a lot of people are saying no to you, it's because you're really fun to say no to. And I don't think people are willing, for the most part, to be personally responsible enough to know that their life and what they're getting is their fault and 100% their design, because it's a lot easier for people to be victims. It's a lot easier for people to say, "Oh yeah, other people got lucky," or, their world worked out, or their spouse was better, or this. It's nonsense. No matter what it is what it is. And we as human beings, we have to deal with what emerges because we don't really have any choice. I was married twice before I met my one true wife. And I'm glad that I was, especially my second marriage was particularly bad, completely unsuitable for each other. And because that marriage was so bad, the wife my one true wife, Erica, she's the best decision I ever made in my life. Except I know, because I have a basis of comparison. I know what a bad relationship looks like. So now I know what a perfect relationship looks like.
I find that some of my best salespeople on my team are the guys who've gone and invested 30, 40, 50, 100K into themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Even Luke here, right? Like, he invested into your stuff and now he's, working alongside you.
Luke's 22. And he's working with my organization, and he came to a seminar that I wasn't even supposed to be at. He didn't even know I was going to be there. Somebody else was there, and he came to see the other person. And within a couple of minutes, he told me later, he said, "I'm sitting there, I saw you on stage," and I said, "Oh, that's the guy I'm supposed to see." And we have a program called Inner Circle. It's our mastermind, and it's pricey. When Luke invested in it, it's $60,000. Now it's $70,000. And at 22 years old, Luke came up to me at the first break and he said, "Whatever you're selling, I'm buying." I said, "I'm selling a $60,000 program." He said, "I can give you a deposit. I've got to fly back to Chicago to put the rest of the money together, except I'm buying." And that's what he did. I would agree with you that those that are afraid to buy are always afraid to sell. And I'll say it again. Those that are afraid to buy will telegraph that fear when they're selling and cause the people they're selling to become afraid. Those that like to buy will instantaneously telegraph that to the people they're interacting with because that's how they genuinely feel.
Are you a buyer?
I am.
Okay.
Yep. I'm a big buyer.
Okay, great. So when you come to my, I'm just joking. I'm not.
No, don't joke. Yeah. Say it.
No, I'm just.
But you see, that's the point, though. Boldness is rewarded. So
I don't know what I'm going to sell you.
I'll buy whatever you're selling.
When you buy from me, yeah.
Whatever you're selling. The thing, though, is that if you're not selling something that you have a moral and ethical obligation to sell, meaning you make the world a better place when you sell it, and the world is harmed when you don't sell it, then you need to figure out what that thing is. So when I sell to you, I sell with a clear conscience. I sell actually not just with a clear conscience. Should you not buy from me, I feel bad for you. Not for me. I feel bad for you, and I know that I screwed your life up, that I hurt you by not selling you something that I know will benefit your life forever.
Yeah, I've heard from people that have experienced your programs that, people talk about personal development growth, the things that really have changed their lives. They talk about Landmark. They talk about a few other things. I've heard from people that yours is better than everything else.
It is.
What is the process, and how are you delivering such phenomenal results for your clients and people that invest with you?
You're kind to say that, and I appreciate that, and I believe that. And I believe what our distinction is twofold. You take a program like the one you just mentioned, or any that are kind of widespread, and part of the challenge is the founder of, as an example, Landmark Forum, Warner Earhart. He's not involved in the program anymore. So as he's been away from it, it's morphed into something very, very different. Because I still teach 100% of my programs, they're getting it right from the source. I've made over $600 million doing what I do, so it's not about money anymore. Thank you, God. I don't have to make it about money anymore. And there's a point when it's not about money, ironically, is when you make the most money.
Mm. You had the $100 million infomercial, right?
We did with Passion, Profit, and Power back in 1994. I produced an infomercial for $10,000. And in the first year, we did $120 million in sales on a $100 product.
Which that's like got to be you were probably the guy on, obviously I was born in 94, so I wasn't watching it, but you're the guy on the infomercials, right?
There's still time for you to buy.
there's Marshall, right? People see it.
Yes.
Right. Is there a day?
Well, let me clarify. I wasn't the guy. Tony Robbins was the guy at that time. And I'll fill you in because you were a baby. How would you know? Tony Robbins was the guy, and I was watching Personal Power. And while I was watching the show, I thought, gosh, this is great. Clearly, he's doing well. I did some research, come to find out Personal Power and Tony Robbins was doing $3 million a month in sales. This is back in 1994, so that's nothing to sneeze at. That's pretty good. There was another infomercial, though, that was on more frequently with a woman named Dionne Warwick, and the show was called The Psychic Friends Network, where you could call up a psychic, and for $2.99 a minute, you could ask, does he love me? And I do the research, come to find out they were doing $30 million a month, $1 million a day. And the lesson for me was that people like magic. People like the magic button. They want the magic wand. They want the spell that will make somebody else fall in love with them. And so I said, I have that product. It's half personal development. It's half magic. And my product, my hypnosis-based product is right there in the middle. And because the show was so effective, we converted so well, it knocked Personal Power off the air for 3 months. Robbins couldn't run his ad because we could afford to overpay for media. So Guthrie Ranker, the producers of Personal Power, along with Tony Robbins, called me up one day and they said, could you come meet with us? And I go to their office to meet with them. And in their office, they said, first of all, we transcribed your infomercial. We're going through every detail, every line, everything you're doing. We don't have any clue of how you're selling so well. Are you hypnotizing people to buy your product? And I said, of course not. Because that's what I was doing. I mean, that is what I do. And, when you get down to the basis of it, that's what hypnosis is. It's influence. Except my definition of influence is very different than most people's definition of influence. My definition of irresistible influence is not getting somebody else to buy. It's getting somebody else to beg me for what I'm selling, and more importantly, have them believe it was their idea. So when you get to that point where they don't think they're being sold, they just believe they want to buy on their own volition, that's when you truly have stepped into super influence.
What's the process of breaking down the resistance and having someone get to that point where it's their decision? People, this is what, if you speak to people in your world, because I've seen it, because, we did that broadcast, I'm watching the stuff, the messages people are saying, like, they're like, no, I don't like to be sold. I like to buy.
Yes.
And that's the belief that they have. They're buyers. They're not, people being sold to. So how have you been able to develop that? And what are you putting into these people where they're coming to you, begging you, as you're saying, to buy your stuff?
I don't know that everybody doesn't like to buy. In fact, I think that it's a higher level state to get to where you like to buy. I like to buy. I like to buy things. Do not send me to Best Buy. I will come back with all sorts of gadgets I do not need. Do not send me to the grocery store when I'm hungry because I'm going to buy everything. I like to buy. I don't even eat Girl Scout cookies, but if I pass a girl with a table of Girl Scout cookies, I will buy all of their cookies just to give them that experience of, knocking it out of the park. And then I'll go to some area where there's homeless people and just give the cookies away. I like to buy. It's good for me. It's good for you. It's good for the entire economy. Everybody wins. And so because of that, I have a completely different frame about what buying and that whole process is.
Okay. Now your products, your products are all named the result that they're getting, right? Mm-hmm. Turning point.
First million, yeah. Irresistible influence.
How important is naming in the product?
Everything. Yeah, it's so important because that's the first piece of influence. That's the first piece of hypnosis. And my belief is that, and that's a really good observation on your part, by the way. When you do that, you don't have to explain anything more. It's always interesting to me when people come up with these crazy names for whatever their offer is that has nothing to do with what the offer is. I think to myself, you missed a point. You missed the mark there, because now people have to say, okay, your name is Scuttledink. Now, what's a Scuttledink? I don't know. Now you have to explain it to them.
Educate them on what that is.
You got to take another breath to do that, and that may be a breath they're not listening to.
Yeah, because people come up with these crazy acronyms like the IHTB system, and then they go out and pitch it and sell it. But the things that you see crush, like, Grant Cardone, 10X.
Right.
That happened accidentally.
Yep.
He wrote the book took off, and that became the brand.
Yep.
Right. And same with you. So did you discover that early on? Like, hey, let me name this because Tony's what was he running at the time?
Personal power.
Personal power.
Yep.
And then you
Passion, profit, and power.
Span off that a little bit.
It wasn't a spin off of that. And I'll tell you what it was. Same thing that you were just talking about. At that time, infomercials in the mid-90s.
They must have been pissed when they saw your infomercial crushing it.
Tony wasn't happy. In fact, that year, there was a infomercial convention. And my infomercial had literally, right before the conference, knocked him off the air for 3 months. And Tony was there. He was standing in the hallway, and he was talking to somebody in the hallway. And I walked up very politely, very respectfully, and I stood beside him, waiting for him to finish his conversation with the person he was talking to. And they finished the conversation, and I said, "Hi, Tony, Marshall Sylver." He said, "Oh, nice to meet you. What do you do?" And I looked at him and I said, "You know what I do," because we knocked him off the air.
And so he did know.
Of course he knew. But my point in that was his program called Personal Power. Once again, we know what power is. We know what personal is. So I wanted to do a show called Passion, Profit, and Power. And the reason I wanted to call it Passion, Profit, and Power is I knew that I couldn't get sex, money, and power on the air, that they wouldn't run the show. And so I did Passion, Profit, and Power. When I went to do the infomercial, I pitched the show to over 100 different producers and distributors, and most of them said, you can't do a show that broad. You got to do a show about relationship, or do a show about money, or do a show about, weight loss. You cannot do a show about all those topics. And I said, I'm doing a show about all these topics because I want something broad. And I ultimately know that somebody that figures out money usually can figure out relationship, usually can figure out health, and vice versa. If they can transpose the discipline that they created to produce a result in one area, then they should be able to produce a result in another area.
Interesting. Now, with that being said, like, you're obviously, I asked you, I think on your show, what's your biggest strength? And you said communication and persuasion. And, I'm not deep in this world, but, explain what that means to you, and what, people talk about NLP as like this evil thing. So tell me about persuasion and communication and the tools you're using within it.
I don't know of any of those people that call NLP evil. I certainly have heard people, "Get behind me, Satan," to me as I walked by, and my response is, well, may God bless you too. And you judge which one might be living closer to the terms. The thing about NLP is the study of two guys named Grinder and Bandler as they observed a hypnotist named Milton Erickson. And so they took a small portion of Milton's work and they created this thing called NLP. NLP is a classic example of marketing. The whole thing behind Grinder and Bandler is they didn't come up with anything new. NLP's got nothing new inside of it. What they did, though, was packaged it differently. You mentioned earlier, people like acronyms. Because people like acronyms, they knew if they created this new technology, they could sell something, which was hypnosis, that people that thought hypnosis was old school or against their religion or fake or any of the above things, they could bypass that. So smart marketing on their part, yet kind of confusing to the general public as to exactly what that was.
Because NLP's become kind of like this, like the standard, oh, I'm trained in NLP, XYZ. It's just that, right? It's that.
Right.
It's what you do, but someone repackaged, or an element of what you do, but people repackaged it and sold it as their own.
Grinder and Bandler created this technology. Tony Robbins came around at the right time. And Tony, because Grinder and Bandler weren't particularly camera ready, they weren't great on camera. Tony came along and was much better at presenting it. And so he really was the reason NLP took off.
Okay. So you built a massive audience and through doing this, and now you've events you run. I think you said you just ran one this week.
We did.
Right?
Yep.
What's the process you're going through to fill a room up with people? And then how are you going to ascend those people to buying your products?
I've been doing the educational side of what we do for about 40 years now. And quite a few years back, I think 1999, 98, I got a call and I was between gigs on the Strip. My show I wasn't performing on the Strip. And I got a call, and it was from a guy that does real estate investment training, a guy named Ron LeGrand. And he called me up and he said, hey, I've got a seminar going on in Atlanta. There's 1,000 people in the room that want to learn how to buy and sell real estate. They've all spent $1,000 a piece to be there. I heard you do a stage show, and I heard you're a good hypnotist. Is that true? I said, no, it's not true. He said, what's not true? I said, I'm not a good hypnotist. I'm the best in the world. And if I meet somebody better than me, I'll pay them to be their best student. And he said, okay, what would you charge me for the show? And I said, I'd charge you $25,000 plus two first-class airline tickets, ground transportation, and lodging. And he said, oh my God, is that the best you can do? Which was his negotiation tactic. And he said, what if I let you come back the next day and speak and teach these people? I said, then I'd let you pay me another $25,000. And he said, no, you don't understand. What if I let you come back the next day, teach these people, sell them something, and to compensate you, you just keep all the money for whatever you sold? I have a belief that you should take a bad gig until a good gig comes along. And so I said, sure, I'll do that. Just cover my airfare, cover my lodging and my expenses, and I'll be there. So I flew out to Atlanta, and I did my show. And the show, everybody loved the show. And I came back the next day, and he gave me 90 minutes on stage. And I'd never done it before, so I didn't know what to do. So I offered up a training that we've been doing for 40 years called Turning Point. And I offered up the training at $495. And I close. And 800 people in the room leap out of their chairs, race back to the back table, and buy. Well, the promoter who hired me is standing at the back, and I can see the smoke coming out of his ears. He's pissed. And I walked up to him and I said, Ron, are you mad that you don't get any of this money? He said, no, I'll get the money next time. And I said, what are you so mad about? He said, you screwed up my weekend. I said, how'd I do that? He said, you sold your offer for too little. Now when I go back to sell my offer at more, you're going to make me look bad, and you look too damn good. You will never be on my stage again unless you quadruple or more your price point. Well, thanks to that advice, I went back and doubled and tripled and quadrupled and never saw any reduction in the amount of conversion we had. So he literally multiplied my income in that instance many, many, many times over. But I also never went back to the old model of what I did. You know, it used to be that I would want to get a speaking fee, except when I realized that I could make more money by not getting a speaking fee and relying on my own talent to close from the stage. Tony gets paid $250,000 on average when he goes out and speaks. Plus, they usually give him $50,000 for expenses to pay for jet fuel or whatever else he's doing. I frequently am booked on the same stage as Tony Robbins because they use him as the draw to fill the room up. They bring me in after Tony. They don't pay me a dime. I sell things. While he makes $250,000 guaranteed, I pull $1.2 to $2 million out of that same crowd because I'm paid on my talents.
Yeah, that's cool. So you do fill rooms yourself, though. You're not just the hired assassin coming in to close deals.
So the answer to that is the majority of my audiences before I retired, and I went into semi-retirement when we started having kids, and that was 13 years ago. I have 3 children. I've got Sterling Marshall Sylver, Maximus Marshall Sylver, and my daughter's name is Prosperity Erica Sylver. When we started having babies, I went into semi-retirement. Prior to that, though, almost 100% of my business came from strategic alliance relationships. You have a conference going on, you got 300 people coming to your event in Las Vegas, you want somebody to come in and entertain your crowd, do a show. I come in, give you the show for free, don't charge you, straight off the strip in Las Vegas. Then the next morning I come back and I teach people how I did what I did the night before, and more importantly, how to apply it in their lives. And then I close, and then I sell, and then I share the revenue with you. So not only is your event better, you got free entertainment, you got world-class keynote speaker for free, you also probably paid for your event with one speaker. So that was for years and years how I filled up all my own personal events, was going to other people's events and being that person.
So when you step on stage and you're going and you're giving a talk, but the intention, the goal is I'm going to sell a product at the end of this, how do you structure that talk so that you're still giving them value and doesn't feel like a pitch fest, and by the end of it, they're primed and ready to go ahead and buy?
That's a great question, and interesting the way you asked it too. Again, everything matters, and so that's the other thing that I teach people to do.
What am I doing when I'm asking it? What do you see? What do you?
You mentioned Pitch Fest.
Yeah.
And you mentioned how do you structure it? And my guess is what you were actually asking me is how much of your presentation is actually content, and then how much is closing. Am I close?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's common. That's a very common question. Sometimes when I get booked to do an event, they'll even say to me, you need to make 90% of this content and 10% close. And my response is, I don't know how to do that. 100% of what I'm going to do is content. And 100% of what I do is going to be a close. There's no differentiation. I'll see speakers get on stage and their brain is wired to what you just asked about. They get out there, they think if I teach enough good content, people will buy from me. And so they'll teach content. Then when they get down to that last 10% where they're supposed to close, you can see their butt cheeks tighten. You can see their physiology shift as they are about to go into their close because they feel awkward about it, because they feel like they're now becoming a pitch fest and now they're afraid people won't like them. So we just got done with a 4-day event. We had a number of other speakers come in. I'm the first speaker up to set the pace, to kind of set the tone for everything. And when I step on stage, the first thing I say is, I'm going to be with you in and out of the room over the next 4 days, teaching you content. I'm going to make 2 offers. I'm going to offer you this, and I'm going to offer you that. I'm going to have some other speakers come in.
You start with that.
I tell them right up front that I'm going to do that. What it does is it manages their expectation. So if they're sitting there going, what are you going to try to sell me? And I tell them what I'm going to offer, they go, oh, okay, all right. And then they relax. I also tell them we're going to have other speakers coming in. Some of the speakers will just teach. That's all they'll do is they'll teach. Some of them will teach and then offer something up for sale. Whether they are just teaching or teaching and selling, if you like their content, stay in the room. If you don't like their content, leave. Go have lunch. Go use the restroom. Go visit something in Vegas. Come on back. You'll probably like the next speaker. The reason we set it up this way is I couldn't possibly know what you're working on right now. And I couldn't possibly know what everybody was working on because everybody's different. So the best way I can serve the entire audience is to throw a whole bunch of noodles at the wall. You decide which ones you want. And if you hear somebody whose content you really like and they offer you an opportunity to learn more, well, you can buy what they're selling and everybody's happy. The worst thing you could possibly do is get angry that somebody was selling something, because that's how the world works. You're an online marketer. And in the online marketing space, I hear that term pitch fest a lot. And some of your peers, and you might not even like me by the time I'm done, I'm okay with that as long as I tell the truth. But that idea of a pitch fest is, I have noticed that a lot of people in the online marketing space, they're okay with selling anything in the online marketing space. The moment you get them live and in person, they become almost timid. They become almost afraid that people will judge them, which they do. People vote with their wallets. So if I stand on stage and I do my close and nobody runs to the back, I suck. And the evidence is right there for everybody to see. Yet when I stand on stage and everybody races back to the back, it creates validation for everybody in the room that hasn't yet leapt out of their seat to say, oh, all these other people are buying? This must be a good offer. It validates for them. They too then stand up and go back to the back, and we call that table rush.
I think it's scary, the idea of stepping on stage and I've done many webinars, trainings. I've sold millions and millions of dollars worth of stuff from that. And
you're brilliant, by the way. You're really good at your stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, at the with a webinar, my structure is intro. I started adding in probably 6 months ago, hey, I'm going to pitch you guys, which makes me feel better and makes them feel better. And then when we get to the close, it's not like I knew this guy was going to sell us something, right? And then, then three content points where I really do try to tell them, give them value. I really try to serve, that I'm a giver. And then we'll go into the close. Mm-hmm. How do you structure a live talk in person? Is it the same thing when you're going through that process?
Yeah, it's the same process. First and foremost, telling them up front, I'm going to make an offer. Telling them what the offer is at full retail is also smart, because now you've got them over sticker shock. Telling them
to start?
Yeah, right in the very beginning of your presentation. And then also when you say, hey, I've got this thing I'm going to offer. It's called Turning Point. The retail investment for Turning Point is $3,000. I've been offering up that program for $3,000 for 30 years. Of course, that's not the investment you're going to make. I'm going to give you an amazing discount and a better than money back guarantee so that when you take action, you're going to feel completely safe. So all of that was called future pacing. I'm projecting you into a future. I'm addressing some of your pieces of resistance. I'm telling you what the price point is. I'm kind of exciting your imagination and telling you I'm going to reduce it. So pay attention to that. I'm going to give you bonuses. And then ultimately, I do risk reversal by telling you I'm going to give you a better than money back guarantee so you're safe. So now you're saying, okay, fill in the details. Let me make a choice. But there's nothing covert about it. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that marketers and salespeople and presenters make is they attempt to be covert. You know, this conversation when we started, I don't use techniques. It's how I communicate because I've reached a level of unconscious competency where I've said, you know, this is me. Do you smoke cigarettes?
No.
So you don't smoke cigarettes. So you don't need to force yourself not to pick up a cigarette and smoke it. You don't smoke. This is how I communicate. It's how I communicate with you. It's how I communicate from the stage. It's how I talk to my wife. It's how I raise my children. And frankly, how they communicate too. So you know, when you're on a stage, it's not really different than one-on-one. It's not different than like a webinar. The distinction though is on a webinar, I can always click stop stream and you know, run away. In a live setting, you're looking at the person that you're communicating with, and you can instantaneously see what their response is. And if they don't stand up and buy, there's your result.
I'm hearing it through your communication. Like this is something I've tried to train myself to do is speak in the positives, right? And like I know that our words are the first manifestation of our thoughts into reality,
Yes.
right? They're tangible, and then you know, of course, we can then write them down and create them, and it goes from there. With that being said, you're flipped like almost everything you're saying. Even when I say pitch fest, you say opportunity, right?
Yes.
And vice versa.
I'm going to sell you something, and I say, no, I'm going to make an offer.
Sure. Yeah, there we go. And
Yep.
you've obviously trained or learned or studied, or it's just who you are. But I haven't heard you say objection. I'm hearing resistance, I think?
Yes. Yeah, I don't say objection. I say you play with resistance.
What does that mean?
When somebody seeks to influence somebody else, a person of authority doesn't take it personally. I'm not offended. I don't feel bad. Oh my God, they didn't buy from me. There must be something wrong with me. Going back to what I said before, because I believe in what I'm selling, because I believe in my offer, when you don't buy from me, I don't feel bad for me. I feel bad for you. I feel bad because I know you investing in my offer is going to make your life better. So I don't think what you say to me is an objection. I think what you're saying to me is a request for more information because I'm not taking it personally. I play with it. You know, if you go bowling and they tell you the objective is to knock down those pins and you say, great, you hear it. And you run down the alley and you kick the pins over with your foot and you run back. Well, you got the outcome. That's just not the game. And so many times people don't realize that if you play with resistance, that you don't get angry. You don't find them at fault. You simply say, I understand how they would feel that way. I understand why they would respond that way. How do I change this up and get them to respond differently? How do I frame this thing? How do I present this thing in such a way that they make an emotional decision, because all buying decisions are based first on emotion and then backed up with logic. I arrived in my Rolls-Royce Phantom here at your studio. Nobody needs a $450,000 automobile to get from point A to point B. It's purely vanity. Anybody that has more than a $40,000 or $50,000 car, it's vanity. And at the same time, though, even though nobody needs a Rolls-Royce Phantom, you'll need it when you drive it. You'll need it when you ride in it a little while. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, a mind once expanded cannot contract to its original state. I say, a wallet once expanded will never contract to its original state. Once you get used to living a bigger life, you'll want that life. Fly with me once on the private jet, you'll like it. Fly with me twice, you'll like it a lot. Fly with me 3 times, you will be ruined for life. And so that's the idea. I don't experience what somebody says as an objection. I experience it as resistance, and then my job is to play with the resistance.
You said this is who you are. This is how you communicate to your wife too. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I see people and I feel like that guy is always on stage. I'm not saying this about you, by the way, by no means. I'm just,
even if you were, I'd be over it.
because it's not a projection of you, it's a projection of me.
Right, and then I'm getting back in my Rolls Royce when we get done with this interview.
But I do think that there's like, for me, I always want to be real. I want to be, and if this is who you are all the time, you're 100% real to you. But do you ever feel like people interpret it as like, when's he gonna just, when's he gonna turn off? Do you ever get that from people?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not the same as I am when I'm watching Law and Order.
Okay.
When I'm watching Law and Order, I'm in my robe, and I was going to show up in my robe. I just didn't think you'd like that.
It doesn't go well.
And they didn't pay enough, by the way. You didn't pay enough.
It doesn't go well with the thong either.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. That's a good question too. I remember when I was a kid, I was a magician, and I would do my magic show, and I was a really good magician. I was a teenager, and the teenage girls would walk up when I got done, and they go, "Oh, you're so amazing. We should go hang out." The challenge was when I was on stage, I was very confident. And when I wasn't on stage, I was not confident because we were poor and I was very introverted. And so I would go and I would, meet up with the girl, have a date with the girl. And within 5 minutes, I'd see their eyes gloss over. And I knew what the look was. The look was, who the heck are you? And where's the guy that I saw up on stage that was so confident? And so one day I had to ask myself, which guy are you? Are you the confident guy on stage? Or are you that, insecure guy off stage? And the answer was real simple. I'm both. Then I had to ask a better question. Which guy would it be better to be all the time? If I can choose, which guy would be better to be? And I think that's the challenge that people don't really stop and think about. They think I'm this way here, I'm that way there. And I say, if you're not being authentic, this is me. And this is me when I'm doing an interview on a broadcast like what you're doing right now. This might not be me with this level of intensity when I'm with my kids or when I'm being intimate with my wife. It's a part of me, though. So I think it's really important for people to figure out who their authentic self is. Kind of like one of the rules I made when I first met my wife. I'd had other relationships, and I said, okay, you got to do something different if you want a better relationship. And so the first thing I decided to do with my wife was not send my representative to the first few dates. I decided I was going to send Marshall in his raw form, imperfections and all, to the first dates so that she could either like me or not like me. Fortunately for me, she likes me.
I did a webinar 2 days ago, and one of the messages in the chat was, I can tell you're a pitch man. I can hear it in your voice. And then the username goes gray, and he jumped off.
Yep.
And that was like immediate feedback for me. I was like,
so what did you think about that? How did you feel?
It was feedback, right? Oh, I think I'm coming with too much over enthusiasm for today's training instead of being, your enthusiasm, your persuasion, it feels very authentic, where it's not like this hype excitement that you're putting on. Like, I don't turn off the webinar and then go down, to my dogs with the same kind of energy. Right. But I would imagine, you do.
I don't actually.
Okay.
No, I mean, obviously there's behavior that's appropriate for any circumstance. But I want to address that person that might have said, and I know you were just making up an example, might have said, oh, you're just a pitch man, and then they run away. First and foremost, they weren't your customer. So it's water on a duck's back.
But they might have been.
No, they weren't. If they were, they would have stayed and bought from you. So they're not. And you know who Ryan Dice is? Mm-hmm. You know who Perry Belcher is? Mm-hmm. Two of the best marketers on the planet. They were at my home one day, and they were visiting me here in Vegas, and they asked me a question. They said, how big's your database? And I said at the time, I don't know, 150,000 people. And they said, how often do you mail to your database? I said, every couple of weeks. They said, you don't have a database. And I said, you're nodding now because you get it. I didn't get it. I wasn't a marketer. And they said, if you only mail every couple of weeks, you don't have a database. I said, well, what do you mean? They said, if you're not mailing every day, you don't have a database. I said, how often do you mail? They said, 3 times a day. 3 times a day. Don't people opt out? They said, yes. Those people that opt out aren't our customers. Yeah. There are people that are going to be offended that you sell. There's going to be people that are everywhere they go, they're going to resent. I don't even like the fact that people have adopted the word Karen, the name Karen, to represent, because there's a whole lot of Karens, people that named Karen that aren't that kind of a person, so it's not fair. Same thing with Brandon, of course. They should just say FJB is what they should say. But my point in all that is that some people think that there's something wrong with selling people. And my response to that is what? Are you new? Don't you realize that's how the world works? If nothing is sold, the entire economy crumbles instantly. Salespeople, we are the cornerstone of the economy. And when we sell more and we create more velocity, we get money exchanging hands more rapidly, the same dollar going to this person, then going to that person, then going to this person, then going to that person. When we can create that velocity, the economy is better. So, if people say, you're just trying to sell me something, I look at them in the eye and go, yeah, that's my job. It's what I do. I don't make apologies for it. It's what I do. And I'll tell them, it's good for me. It's good for you. It's good for the entire economy. Everybody wins. You're not obligated to buy from me. If you want to buy from me, I'd like that. Your life will be better. If you don't buy from me, I won't disrespect you. I'll just feel bad for you. In fact, I'm going to make an offer that's so appealing, only a moron wouldn't take me up on it. And then I say that with a smile, and they giggle, and they realize that maybe what they're doing is just resisting something that might actually be in their best interest.
I think that for me, when I hear that, there's the people that are just never going to buy. But then there's also the feedback where it's like, you've been doing this for decades. So that
and damn, I look good. You're supposed to say, and damn, you look good.
And damn, you look good.
Thank you.
You've been doing this for decades, and damn,
man, you're old, but you still look okay.
And so when someone says that to you, that person's not a buyer. They can go, because
they might be. That's the thing. They might be. So my point was, don't be offended by it. And certainly don't change your whole direction of your trip for them.
But I think if one person says it, there's probably more people thinking it that didn't say it.
I will hypnotize you out of that insecurity.
It's an opportunity for me to strengthen what I'm doing and get better at it, right?
Could be. Or they could just be a jerk.
Yeah, that could be the case.
Yeah, and I really mean that. I think that people err on the side of being overly sensitive, frankly. I think that a lot of salespeople, you told me when we were chatting previously that you had watched my webinar and you had said there's a lot of good content in there, and there is. If you're a marketer and you want to see everything I'm talking about and all those principles laid out in a very specific scripted formula, watch my webinar called Missing Piece to Millions, because inside of that is that whole process. I believe, though, that most people, they take it personally when people don't buy. They take it personally when people say things. And I don't know about you. I like myself. And if there's something about myself that I don't like, I change it. Nobody else is going to point something out that they don't like about me and make it be something that I don't like about me. If everybody's saying the same thing, I better consider it, or I'm an idiot. But if one person says something, number one, I want to consider the source. When you get attacked online, isn't it usually somebody that has some creature or some comic as an avatar on their profile? Mm-hmm. And then if you go to their profile, there's almost no comments because they know they go around attacking people. So I don't have any patience for that. In fact, I kicked somebody off my broadcast the other day for being negative in the comments, and I just said, go away. Don't come back. I'm not your guy, because that's the truth.
So to be able to have this belief, you need to know your product is really good.
Yes.
What are you doing on the back end to serve your people and have that belief that you're fulfilling not just 100%, but 1,000% or 100,000%?
Yeah, we fulfill it 1,000% or 100,000%. Do
you have systems in place? Like, obviously, didn't start there. I'm sure it's kind of like a sloppy first kiss. Like, eventually, you figure it out.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever had a sloppy kiss.
Okay.
and I mean that. I think that you're right. Obviously, when we first do things, it's not going to be as good as when we've done it a bunch of times and we do it later. I think most people, again, need to put out crap and then put out crap 2.0. It worked for Microsoft. It worked for Apple. It works for Nike. Everything starts. So the first thing I would tell anybody watching this broadcast, be unafraid to put something out. Then rehearse, review, revise. Put something out, see what could be made better, make it better. See what could be made better, make it better. I don't believe the adage, the customer is always right. I believe that, yes, you want to do your very best to serve customers. You definitely want to deliver what you promised. Don't ever promise something you're not going to deliver. I see marketers all the time over-promising and under-delivering. And Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich said, always do more than you're paid for, always give more than you've been paid for, always over-deliver. And I would agree with that. Surprise people. How long have you been in Vegas?
4 years.
So one of my favorite restaurants in Las Vegas is Nobu Sushi. And I'm a VIP at Nobu. I just want to go on record, I'm a VIP. When I go to Nobu, they're very expensive, by the way. Their sushi is very good, except it's substantially higher priced than other sushi that's close to being as good. They're very good, though. And it's overpriced. So when I go there, though, because I'm a VIP, they'll give me free entrees, or maybe, they'll give me dessert for free or knock 10% off my bill. Come to find out, everybody's a VIP. That's part of their strategy, is they charge enough to have a margin that they could give you back things and make you think you were a VIP. And so it doesn't take a whole lot to surprise people. You know, somebody signs up for my Inner Circle program. Right after they put their deposit down and they head home from the seminar, you know, they put down a $10,000 deposit. They know they've got a balance of $60,000 still due on that Inner Circle. Before they get home, by the time they hit their front door, there's a bouquet of roses at their front door. And the reason is I know their brain, if they're normal, is thinking on the way home, oh my God, I just committed to a $70,000 investment in myself. Maybe I should cancel. When they get home and they see that bouquet of roses that they didn't expect, I never mentioned, never said was going to be there, they get that bouquet of roses, now they have to stop and think. They go, oh man, now I got to cancel, maybe have to send the roses back. And though subconsciously it says, he never told me he was going to do this for me, are there other things that he's going to do above and beyond that he didn't say he was going to do, which is absolutely true.
How do you determine the price point of your products that you're selling?
Good question. I believe there's always a market for the very best of something. Donald Trump said it, by the way. You build the best property on the best location using the best material, and there'll always be someone who will buy it. I don't have a desire to have the biggest crowds in the world at my seminars. I've been on stages for quite a bit of my career, 15, 20,000 person arenas. Even in that circumstance, out of the 20,000 people, there's 1,000 qualified buyers in there. So while it's a lot of fun to do an arena, as a business venture goes, I'd rather just have the 1,000. I'd rather just have those 1,000 buyers there, have the 19,000 that weren't qualified. They don't need to be there, and I don't need to pay for them. That said, myself, my companies, I have some of the highest closing ratios, dollars per head, of anybody in the business. And once again, if I meet somebody that's better than me, I don't have an ego attached to it. I'll pay them to learn what they're doing, except I haven't found that person yet. So how I structure my pricing is you want to structure your pricing to a point where people are paying attention. One of the questions I ask in my seminars, hey, if I gave you this $70,000 program for free, would you want to attend? If their hands don't go up, if they don't agree, they're not a customer at any price. They just don't want it. But if their hand goes up, now I know they want it. Now we're negotiating what's the investment they're willing to make. And then I say, how many of you, first of all, it's not going to be free. Not a chance in hell that's going to happen. How many of you realize, though, if you had paid $1 million for this course, you'd be taking better notes because you'd have to. And so it's kind of a balance in there. I want people to invest in themselves to a point where they'll take it seriously, they'll actually use the information, and they'll make sure that they go back out and say, okay, how do I get a positive return on my investment? And I think that sometimes you lose a sale by not charging enough. People say, well, if this thing does all that and you're only charging this low price, you got to be lying to me.
Hey, this has been awesome. Thanks for coming on. Anything else you want to share with?
Not at all, other than if you'd like to. I'd love to give a gift to your listeners if you're open to that.
Sure.
If anybody would like to come join us at Turning Point, we do it every other month here in Las Vegas. All they've got to do is contact your office, tell them that they heard me on this podcast and that they'd like to get on your guest list at my event, and come see what we do.
If there's a link, I'll put it in the show notes and the description if you're watching this on YouTube. Thanks for coming on. Besides that, how can people connect with you?
They can go to sylver.com, SYLVER.com, or they can go to IamTheNextMultimillionaire.com, and they can download a free hypnotic subconscious reprogramming audio that'll fill up their brains with the thought of a multimillionaire to produce similar results.
Very cool. Last thing before I let you go is I have this book that I revived from the dead. I did this with many podcasts.
It looks like a book from Harry Potter. Where are the teeth?
Cool. They're about to come out. Ready?
Lovely.
The previous guest wrote a question for you. They didn't know who you were. You're going to answer the question, and you'll leave one for the next guest.
What fun.
So this was Zach. He said, if you had all the money in the world, which seems like you already do, and money wasn't an issue, what would you spend the rest of your life doing?
This. Yes, I have all my financial needs are met. Thank you, God. I have a 17,000 square foot home here in Las Vegas. I've got a home on the beach down in San Diego. I travel back and forth in a private jet. I have the most perfect woman in the world for my wife. She's the best decision I ever made. My children are geniuses. They're healthy. They're kind. I had everything I want. What would I do? This. As you know, I do a broadcast. It's a live, daily, 2-hour show every single day. And people ask me, why are you doing it? Because I think the world's crazy right now. And I think people need a voice of sanity. So the answer is I would do this.
Cool. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.